Welcome back to the Superheroes Everyday Podcast. I'm Danny Horn. I'm here with Stuart Manning. Stuart, hello.
Hello.
This is Act 3 of Joel Schumacher's 1997 Cry for Help, Batman and Robin. The story so far, the world is on the verge of being taken over by two lunatics who don't understand the difference between the world and a city. Cool customer Mr. Freeze wants to ice the world one person at a time, which is going to take a hot minute. Meanwhile, Bad Seed Poison Ivy plans to scratch out our heroes unless they can get to the root of the problem in Act 3 of Batman and Robin. And then we have a telescope party. One question that I have about this observatory is, it is like, along with the strange architecture, the observatory appears to be lifted up and tilted sideways by an enormous statue who is holding it. I don't know how all of these people get up there.
Yeah, the architecture of this film is something to behold.
Yeah.
I don't mind it, but yes, I mean
This is the one that feels
the
crazy.
planning permission required to build these things in Gotham City is open to much conjecture.
The only thing I can think of is that everybody actually has their own little grappling hook, and they can just like shoot straight up, and everyone gets lifted up. That comes standard in Gotham City. Actually, they would need it with all the like rivers and crevasses and everything.
Yeah, plunge into a ravine after doing the shopping.
So here we are at our telescope party. Julie's still there. Bruce is still carrying Julie around for some reason.
Yeah, well, she's here, but this is actually the one bit Elle McPherson does that I like, where she has a reaction to Gossip Gertie, which borders on shady, and it's clearly a very inexperienced actress trying to find anything to do in a scene where she's standing around not really doing anything. And she just gives Gossip Gertie this look of disdain, presumably thinking I could have done that line just as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, look out for it. It's the nearest she has to a human moment.
But picking on Gossip Gertie, that's the wrong attitude. That's the last person.
You're not gonna make any friends that way.
Yeah, I love Gossip Gertie. Ivy is here in her Pamela Isley costume, and there's a whole, I feel like, unnecessary plot point of finding the bat signal and getting up to in the police station to be able to turn that into a Robin signal. It feels to me like that question, where does that light come from, feels like that is very easily answered. There is a big cone of light,
presumably at police headquarters.
Yeah.
It's a strange sort of thing, and it's not. I think, again, this has happened a few times in this film. I think that was a really great piece of concept art that engineered a moment to have. And there's a great shot we'll see when we get to where Robin, following Ivy, is framed by the Robin signal in this sort of typical noirish way. It's a really beautiful shot, and I'm sure that someone did a really nice drawing of it, and as a result, I got shoehorned into a script.
Yeah,
in this very long-winded, circuitous bit of storytelling. But yeah, and it's also a really long scene with Commissioner Gordon, who is not great.
But Freeze is great. This is a big pantomime villain Freeze moment, where his henchmen are just like giggling around, and he just turns straight to camera and says, "First I will turn Gotham into an icy graveyard. Then I will pull Batman's heart from his body and feel it freeze in my hands. Ah, revenge." Which is perfect. It's just like, nothing in the world can stop me now.
It is that moment, isn't it? It's great.
I love that man. I got nothing but good things to say about him. And then Bane pulls the bat signal off of the roof. Ivy's line is "Let there be light," which I'm not happy with.
Well, again, it's one of these things that's kind of got the shape of a quip, but doesn't really mean anything.
It's the opposite. Yeah.
And there is a lot of these moments in this film, and I guess your mileage varies depending on how much you like the character and how much you like the delivery, because frequently what people are saying is meaningless.
Yes.
It's sort of like ping pong. It's their sort of punch, or it's like an audible full stop.
Yeah.
It's things to sort of get in and out of scenes.
Yeah.
But yeah, the minute you think about them for a split second, yes, what does that mean?
Yeah, that's not a joke. Now Barbara has the little CD-ROM, which she is investigating. Alfred's little thing. She puts on little glasses, which I just think is hilarious. Like
In a manner
they
of someone who's never worn a pair of spectacles in her life.
and she is supposed to be a computer genius. And what she's doing with the computer is just guessing passwords
Very badly.
very badly.
So the first one, Alfred.
Yes. Yeah, she just types in his name. I mean, it's obvious, like the
I
password.
suppose we're at a very nascent stage of technology and the internet, because I was sort of thinking about this, like, because
Oh
obviously
yeah,
this does look kind of antiquated, but I was thinking like how many people in the audience would have a home computer at that point. I guess it's about on the tip of that.
97. Yeah, 97 they might even have dial up by that point.
I think I got on the internet at the end of that year and had my
Yeah.
first PC.
Yeah.
I
And
sort of
so
think
it's
so,
it's so like your first computer password is going to be your name.
yeah, maybe I can't remember what mine was, but yes, maybe.
Well, the one what everyone uses is just it's an obscure Star Wars character. Like that's what
Hmm.
everybody does. Star Wars is made up almost exclusively of passwords that George Lucas came up with. Bruce comes back. Bruce is now visiting Alfred, sitting by his bed, touching his face, and Bruce is smiling. He's saying,
Yeah,
I love
it's,
you, old man."
yeah. This is Clooney's.
Why are you smiling?
I think Clooney wanting to be this likable guy, and I think
Yeah.
it's really counter to what's going on. Yeah, I do kind of like this scene because I think in the sort of bro way that superhero movies usually are, this is
Mm-hmm.
actually feels like a sort of male friendship scene that feels relatable and
Mm-hmm.
not, you know,
Well, it is
it,
definitely it's he says I love you. He says I love you, old
yeah. Which
man.
and
And
I sort of
Alfred says I love you too.
I sort of think that in a way feels, quite revolutionary. It feels even now that feels like a scene you wouldn't really see very often in these kinds of
Yeah.
films.
Yeah.
I wish Clooney played it a bit better.
The thing that I think is funny is that he strokes Alfred's face, which just feels to me like, oh yeah, no, fondling a butler. That's usually what you do. If he's been a good butler, that's what you do is you stroke his face.
Well, you'd be cancelled for it now.
Barbara finally figures out
Yeah,
that
when Barbara
password
finds out, she's not going to be happy.
that Bruce has been fondling him. Barbara
Over a
finally
kiss.
figures out that three-letter password. And the computer is all excited about it because it's saying like access denied. There's like a very kind of stern bit of voice acting from the computer that says access denied. And then when she puts in Peg, the computer says access allowed.
Yeah, it's very slinky, and
It's very excited.
I like the rather feeble succession of PNG
Yeah.
images that sort of scoot down that probably took someone weeks to program.
Yes.
It's quite a nice moment. Again, I think it's slightly tiresome that Batgirl's origin story is she hacked a very easy to hack password
Right.
that was literally written down in front of her.
Yeah.
But then we go into the cave, and actually, I think the bit with the laser lights that aren't quite lasers is
Hmm.
visually really great, and I like the AI Alfred. That's quite modern now. It's kind of odd, really. That's
Yeah.
probably more
He comes
now
up.
than it was.
He does a little bit of a like. There's a little shutter to
It's a little
show.
bit Max Headroom, isn't it?
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
looks like he's been sort of medium filtered or something to make him look a bit plasticky.
And he says, I programmed my brain algorithms into the Bat computer and created a virtual simulation,
So
which
in
is
that
the
case, does it really matter if Alfred dies?
because there's a simulation of him in the back.
He's in the computer. It's got all of Alfred's memories, I presume. It
Yeah.
can it can't pick up shoes, but
I don't know. Can he keep designing things?
maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I think you need the real one. He's because who's going to get all the pizza and the coffee and everything?
Oh, that's true.
Freeze is driving around the city with Bane for some reason, and Freeze is very excited about the telescope to power his freezing engine because once again, we have no idea what a telescope is or what it does.
No.
Telescopes are magical objects that can do almost anything.
Oh, yeah, clearly. I mean, that's. I, I mean, I know it's a hiding to nothing to sort of try and get into the science of this thing, but yes, that's truly bewildering.
And then there's the Robin signal. So you wanted to discuss the Robin signal?
Well, the Robin signal, I think it's a great image.
Yeah.
And I can see why someone thought, yeah, that's really great. You subvert the bat signal, and now
Hmm.
it's the Robin signal, and that does play into everything they've been doing. But it sort of feels like it requires Ivy to be cognizant of this whole psychodrama that's going on between Bruce and Dick, which, as far as I'm aware, she's not.
Well, I think she actually no, she inspired it. She was like right from the start when she dusts them both, she's like trying to play them off each other.
I sort of get that, but it feels, it feels like oddly specific. Like she's done
Hmm.
something that validates Robin in exactly the way that would push his buttons. And
That is true.
maybe Robin's just very basic and she's worked this out and knows exactly how he would operate, which that's plausible. But yeah, I feel
Kind of
like
does.
it should be there should be a sort of moment where it's like, you're better than Batman.
Yeah.
She should be pushing that whole thing much more actively, putting that idea
Hmm.
in his head. Whereas instead, he sort of had that idea before he's even met her to a degree.
That is true. Yeah. Yeah, you're right that she just kind of happens to feed into the thing that's happening with him already. Well,
Yeah,
this is the big resolution scene where Bruce kind of like talks him into being okay. Uh where he's trying to tell Dick that she's hypnotized us. He's all upset. You'd say anything to keep us apart. And then it's his big speech. You once said to me that being part of a team means trusting your partner. Sometimes counting on someone else is the only way to win. Do you remember that? You weren't talking about being partners. You were talking about being a family. So I'm asking you, friend, partner, brother, will you trust me now? And Dick kind of just sighs. I like friend, partner, brother. Like they possibly father, possibly uncle. Like they cannot figure out actually what that relationship is.
no, it does feel like it's not. Well, it certainly feels like it's not been really tailored to the Bruce they've ended up with.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of that feels very placeholder sort of dialogue,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's I don't know. I think the problem I have with that is it's visible screenwriting. I can see exactly what
Mm.
it's there to do, and it's doing it, but in the most perfunctory, on the nose way.
Yes. Yeah.
And
It's not
therefore,
clever.
I can see why it's there. I can
Mm-hmm.
see, yeah, it's the kind of thing. It really there should be a joke somewhere, and it doesn't come.
Freeze taking over the telescope. There's these two scientists who are kind of fussing over it.
Who I
Now,
think we're meant to think of really sort of charming comedy relief,
yeah, they're very cute.
and it's kind of I mean, it's kind of fun, but it's just very left field, given that we've
Mm-hmm.
had a film full of extras who do not speak under any circumstances. We've
Right.
got this Greek
Got a
chorus.
couple of character actors who are
Mm.
going to do their thing for the rest of the movie. Yeah. Now the telescope seems to have it's apparently powered by crystals, which equals enormous diamonds.
Yeah, they look exactly the same as the enormous diamond from
Yeah.
earlier. I kind of like that shot of him elevating up and
Mm-hmm.
right, being surrounded by the diamonds, and he looks delighted by them. I
He
mean, I've
absolutely
just
is.
yeah, I mean, he just loves diamonds. But yeah, I don't really understand how diamonds are a power source.
For telescopes as well as freezing.
Or
Yeah.
as for refrigeration.
Yeah, they will do everything. But yeah, I am fine. He freezes up the scientists. I am fine with watching as much of that effect as they feel like showing me. I think every time it is good. And then there's just the pile of sadness, which is Bane walking around planting these little ice bombs and saying bomb, bomb. It's I can't have that.
It's awful. It really is.
That doesn't make sense.
Doesn't and generally I'll defend the artistry of this film and the craft,
Hmm.
but they do not look anything like ice. They,
Those bomb
they
crystals.
look like the
Yeah.
most plastically
Oh yeah, they absolutely do. Yeah. Yep.
uh
There's some shortcuts on that one for sure.
yeah.
I'm not even sure what an ice bomb would be. And then Barbara gets into the Batcave and she suits up exactly the same as Batman and Robin suited up, where you get like glove, crotch,
Mhm.
heels, thigh, butt, breasts.
I think I like the equal opportunities aspect of that we didn't skip that. You'll have that montage whether you want it or not.
I feel like that's actually the answer to anybody who is talking about this being homoerotic, because people pay a lot of attention to the butt shots at the beginning of the film of the guys, and they do exactly the same thing. Like, this is sort of, I think, the actual like sexlessness of it, which you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about, where just showing her butt is not any more exciting than it was when it was Batman's or Robin's.
No, I mean I suppose there's a problem with those costumes is that they're so inanimate
Mm-hmm.
that you know you are just looking. You might as well be looking at something on a mannequin, and possibly are.
You absolutely are. Yeah, no, there's no way that she's inside that costume.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's just showing you parts of the costume rather than parts of somebody's body. Time for Robin and Batgirl to go and fight with Poison Ivy in the Turkish bath. She is sitting in her big pink flower chair, and Robin is coming in. So this is the big sultry seduction scene. He says, "I want us to be together, but I want to make sure you're serious about turning over a new leaf. I need a sign."
the new leaf line did make me laugh. Actually, that was so dumb, but I kind of loved it. And I like the way I like the way they make the sort of there is a sort of pointlessness, but it's great of him walking across all the lily pads when he
Mm-hmm.
could obviously just walk around the perimeter. But
Yeah, no,
as a
he's just
sort
going
of,
straight for her.
it's just yeah, it's I really like it. I just think the scene works really well. I think, and I love the music. You know, the fact it's sort of that faux slinky sort of
Mm-hmm.
saxophone. Yeah, it's sort of tongue in cheek in just the right way.
And this is the one place where we see essentially like the control of plants, because there's sort of these curtains
Yeah, it's actually
that
quite creepy, that isn't it?
close
That
behind him, yeah, as he's
he's
coming
sort
through.
of kind of aware of it, but only after it's happened.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause this film doesn't really do creepy, and I suppose Poison Ivy as a villain is probably creepy more than anything else, even though they don't really
Yeah,
lean
I
into
mean,
it.
more creepy than sexy, yeah, and could have really used more creepy. You're right. And then she kisses him, and it turns out that he has lip condoms on,
Mhm.
and she's very unhappy about that.
I like this. This is actually something. This actually feels like something smart. We've not seen a lot of people do. You know, certainly we've not seen Robin doing a lot of smart stuff in this film. So,
You're right. It's
yeah.
the one time he has a plan.
Mhm.
But she is pissed off, and she pushes him into a tank of water, where he just stays for the entire rest of the sequence.
Without suffocating.
Yeah, no, he's just kind of struggling down there somehow. Batman comes in. Instead of stopping her, he just like kind of stands in front of her while she has some kind. This actually would have been, if this was the 66 Batman, he would have brought some kind of like bat defoliant or something.
Mhm.
But he has not done that here. And this is the one place where like she actually uses plants and has some vines picking him up. Unfortunately for me, like I wanted her to use plants. It does kind of highlight how lame Batman is in this.
It does that, and it doesn't help that they are really feeble looking kind of rubber
Mm-hmm.
vines. It's like there's a similar sort of sequence in the first Addams Family film, which would have been 91,
Yeah.
where a character gets sort of cocooned in vines, and it's actually done really well. And they're kind of barky, and they look like something you'd struggle. Whereas you've got a lot of I don't know what you call it, like that sort of pantomime exertion acting.
Try acting. Yeah. Where you're just like trying really
I knew there
hard.
was some sort of something you'd call it, but yeah, where you know I'm struggling really hard to get
Yeah.
these ones, but clearly not too
Yeah.
hard. Which actually Clooney also does during the bit where he's ice manacled in the rocket
Yeah,
earlier
that's
on.
right. Sort of like pretending that you're like, oh, I'm really struggling. Yeah.
Particularly bad at that stuff. He
Yeah.
clearly
You can't
it
do it.
feels vaguely demeaned having to sort of pretend this. Yeah, Batman. Batman really is sitting this film out.
Yeah, he really is. And then Batgirl comes in. I mean, all of that is in service of now we get a Batgirl scene. I find this part tragic in a couple of different ways. She comes in through the skylight. These people must spend a fortune on skylights.
It doesn't help. It's a really bad slowed down shot. Something clearly went wrong with that stunt.
Right, of
It's
her.
like it's really undercranked and looks really janky.
Yeah, they're taking their time on it. And then like the first thing that I find tragic about it is she has some great like moments and lines that I wish was the way that character was.
Mm-hmm.
So she comes in, she's like, "You're about to become compost," and then they do like some judo kicks, and she has this like kind of critical line of like using feminine wiles to get what you want, trading on your looks. Read a book, sister. That passive aggressive number went out long ago. Which,
It feels like it's from a completely different character.
yeah, it's very written, but I like that character. It's it's goofy and it's stagey, but I wish that she had been like that the whole time.
Well, it's an attitude, and we've not really seen that.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
whatever thoughts Barbara has on most things other than indentured servitude, she's kept to herself. And so,
Right.
yeah, there is something in her having an attitude and an opinion and expressing it is
Hmm.
kind of in a way that's relevant to the scene. She actually feels connected for the first time, and
Yeah.
we've not done that otherwise.
Yeah, I wish that they had given her a character like this. This would have been interesting this whole time. Like her coming in with that kind of attitude, just even right from the top, like coming in as Alfred's niece. If she
Mm-hmm.
was kind of like snappy and intelligent, written as intelligent, I could have used that. We get a little bit here. And then the most tragic thing, I think, Ivy's defeat. Tell me about Ivy's defeat.
Well, she's kicked backwards into her own plant, isn't
Yes.
she?
Yep.
And I actually kind of like the curses, which I think is very funny because it's just a great last line.
Because
But I mean,
it's just like the ultimate actual cliche pantomime line of curses
oh, it's
foiled
like it's.
again.
I mean, it's like Maleficent falling off the
Yeah.
cliff. It's
Yeah.
so just. I mean, it's a Disney villain's kind of defeat, and I kind of like that. Um, it feels, and I like the image of her being swallowed up by the plant is funny.
Hmm.
But I feel like, how did that defeat her? She's in
I
control of the.
yeah.
Might be her. I can
Yeah.
imagine her sort of. You could have a very funny moment where she staggers out of the plant, unkempt and disheveled, and slugs it out to the finish line.
Or if it was like a big Venus flytrap, which she's been kind of
Well,
suggesting that she would have, and now she's
is
caught in
that
the Venus
possibly
flytrap.
what it's sort of meant to be? And it just
Probably.
doesn't. And it's ended up. Is that sort of an art department's done you dirty, and you've asked for a big Venus flytrap, and they've made you this kind of
I think possibly, yeah.
fluttering orchid,
Hmm.
and it's kind of come across as a result. I mean, there's a sort of odd poison ivy's plants because there's this whole sort of subplot, isn't there? She's going to make plants that
Right. Yeah.
are crossed with snakes, and we sort of see this
Hmm.
Kermit Frog sort of
Yeah.
puppet jar, which is in some ways adorable and is also
Hmm.
possibly the worst prop in the entire film. But
I mean, I would say this is the worst. I would say that this is actually the worst moment in the whole movie. Like just the most, we can enjoy the artifice. You and I have been enjoying the artifice of this crazy movie when it really goes as big as it wants to go. And this is the one moment of artifice where like getting pushed back into the chair where she was just sitting 2 seconds ago just doesn't like it doesn't make sense, and not making sense is fine, but it doesn't feel
I mean, the
right.
way I suppose it would work. I mean, it's a little confused in the sense we don't really know what happens. I mean, is she
Yeah.
just inconvenienced? And actually, it
Right.
turns out she's then defeated. It was, and again, it's not a film where this is going to happen because I say no one really ever gets so much as a hair askew.
Yeah.
But if you would suddenly hear the plant crunching away and her screaming horrifically,
It should be that.
would
It should
would
be
that moment then
yes.
work?
Yes. If that was a Venus flytrap
Mm,
and was chewing on her, that would have worked.
yeah, I think you're right. Whereas, yes, it feels like she's been mildly inconvenienced.
Yeah, exactly.
Defeated.
Yeah. Trapped sitting in your own chair.
I've fallen back into my own chair.
Yeah.
I'm defeated forever.
She's just really tired at that point. It's been a long movie. And now we are going to go to another playset. This is the Mr. Freeze Observatory Micro Playset, where he's
Mm-hmm.
got the telescope and the big dildo shaped rocket, and he is having some fun. Let's kick some ice, he says. And so there's something here that I read about that I wish they'd follow through. He has a blue light in his mouth.
Which he has in some scenes, doesn't he?
I believe that this is the only sequence where he has it. He has it throughout this.
Yeah, because I was reading about this, and because it was talking about it like it's throughout the film. And I was going, I can't see
It's
that.
not.
And
Yeah.
in this scene, you can suddenly see it, and it is kind of weird and a bit uncanny and
I love the way that it looks. I think it
poetic. I can see how
yeah.
well, you press Mr. Freeze's head and a little blue LED lights up in his mouth.
So the problem was that they tried to put an LED in his mouth. They were not very, I guess, very sophisticated about this. And his saliva kind of broke down through the seams. And basically the battery started disintegrating and leaking battery acid into his mouth. So that didn't work. So then they figured out, well, how about we put a balloon over it and put that in his mouth? And I guess that worked enough to get them through this sequence.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's a pity because it's like I'm sure now you could probably do that really easily, but
yeah, it's funny to that feels like a little story from a much more primitive era of filmmaking, of like we didn't realize this was going to leak battery acid. And then we get some new vehicles. Here's where we get, so this is now as demanded by Kenner Toys. Now everybody's got a new costume on, and Batman, so his car is called the Ice Glow Bat Hammer, which looks like a plane but is not. Robin has a jet blade, which is, it has like this big rotating fan on the back, and then Batgirl is on her ice strike cycle,
of course,
kind of going through the frozen Gotham City. And so like here it's just as naked as it could possibly be. They
and they're in new costumes as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
I just don't understand, why isn't there a line ADR'd in to explain that, I don't know, these costumes are protected.
These are their glacial
ice terrain costumes. Yeah. I mean, I like the theatrics of doing a costume change for no reason whatsoever. It feels like something Liz Taylor, if she was in a Batman film, would be doing. But yeah, it's. I think there were, even within the reality of this film, that does divorce it a little bit more than we'd like.
Probably, especially because they're supposed to be like they only have
the clock, aren't they?
Yeah, they have 11 minutes.
11 minutes, and yeah, we'll go back to the Batcave and we'll change.
Get into our whole new costumes. I think they look great though. They do a really nice shot where it's all three of them with their hands on their hips and sort of really showing off like we have cool new suits. The thing that I read was that this was kind of last minute, that the costume designers were sort of taken aback by this, having to do this. And so what they did was they took some old suits and cut out pieces and then like painted them silver and glued those pieces onto the bat suits. But I think they look fantastic.
Oh, they look great, and it's, as a visual, it's great. And actually, for my misgivings about Batgirl, the three of them together look really, really good. You can sort of, it wasn't a movie poster shot, but it could have been.
Yeah. There's a funny thing with Batgirl. I don't know if you noticed this. While she was driving on her little motorcycle, she had a bat cowl on.
Yeah.
And then as soon as she's standing there with the other two, she rips it off and shakes out her hair and she throws it on the ground.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? That feels. Yeah. Does that feel like they did 2 days of unit photography with the stuntmen and then they couldn't reshoot before they made
it? Feels to me like they wanted the costume because they want to sell that toy,
right?
With her with the bat cowl on. But if you've got Alicia Silverstone and she has, beautiful long blonde hair,
you want to see it.
You want to see that. So yeah. But it's this very funny, like, kind of awkward moment of her like just taking it off really fast and putting it on the ground and forgetting all about it. So now they have made a plan. Batman has heaters in his belt buckle, which doesn't seem like the right place to put stuff. But he kind of takes this stuff off of the belt buckle area and is heating up the scientists. They are looking at a control panel. They have 8 more minutes, and the Gothamites will be ice cubes forever. And they know that sunlight could reverse the freezing process.
It could. Yeah, this is a very old sequence, and there's what we were talking about much earlier. I think it suffers from the fact that of all the big rooms we've gone into during the film, the last one is the least remarkable. And I think you tell they know that because they sort of try and dress it up by projecting planets all over it, and they're having this spin, trying to make I don't know if it's a money thing or a time thing, but what's ended up being quite an undressed grey space. They're trying to dress it with lighting in quite a cheap way. And
there's like 2 levels to it, which are kind of confusing because they've got to be up. They're up on some like scaffolding, to operate the telescope, and you don't really see anything under, but there is sort of this undercarriage area.
Yeah, it feels like a sort of. I mean, it feels, if I was being unkind, like a set that's been designed in the absence of a script. Because
Yeah, yeah,
it's not actually terribly helpful for the scenes they've got to stage on it, and that
right.
levels particularly is really awkward and at times unhelpful.
Yeah, they don't really use it properly. Yeah,
And so, yeah, there's that sort of aspect to it. But simultaneously, I love all the stuff about freezing Gotham City. They've got that
that is
backlot,
beautiful. Yeah.
and they do the dumbest joke in the world with the dog raising its leg and being, which is just,
Yeah.
I like that. It's kind of odd. It is a slightly underpowered finale because, as I say, I think we've had all this visual spectacle and it feels like it sags a little bit, and
Mm-hmm.
everyone's maybe a little exhausted and would like to make a very simple film that I
Yeah.
don't know, all on location without building ice mobiles and things like that.
Or it's possible they just don't know. They don't know how to. They've written themselves into something that they don't know how to get out of.
I mean, I suppose the problem it does have, and it's not really. I mean, there's always a problem with these films. How do you end them? And
Mm-hmm.
this is a we press buttons urgently
Right.
ending,
Yeah.
which is not. I don't think it's great for superheroes. I think you want something expressed through action, and they sort of try and do it by having Clooney and Mr. Freeze slug it out
Mm-hmm.
at the last minute, but it's not a great fight, and
Yeah.
it's staged again on this platform that's very narrow, and they can't really move about very
Mm-hmm.
much, and so it ends up being a bit just underpowered.
Yeah. And the telescope kind of tumbles over the cliff a little bit, and the scientists are kind of hanging on it with Batgirl and Robin, and this is another one of those like, oh, they're falling. We know that
Mm-hmm.
these heroes can deal with falling. They just shoot their grappling hooks, which is exactly what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And make short work of that.
Yeah, and it sort of suffers from. I think this thing about heights throughout the entire film, where clearly no one has any perception of what height is in relation to other things.
Right.
Where they seem to be miles in the air, from what I can tell. It's like
Yes.
being at the
Yeah.
top of a skyscraper.
Yeah.
I never for 1 minute. It's like they're not even really sort of doing the thing where you blow fans in people's faces.
Right. Yeah.
It's very much,
They're just yelling. Yeah.
there's a wall of this set that has a green screen and something will be there.
Yeah.
And clearly, none of the actors in that scene quite know what it is. I don't think they're giving a performance. No one, even the very engaged character actors, are not giving a performance that reflects the whole they end
Yeah.
up being.
And then it's kind of a one punch ending for both of the villains. Like Bane has Robin and Batgirl up against the wall.
And that's a really bad take as well.
Yeah. They just kind of
Because,
like kick
come
it.
on,
They kick it a pipe.
it really feels like it needs to be ripped out and it needs to spray.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, oh, come on, guys, could you not have gone for another take of that?
Yeah. They both just kind of like tap it with their feet.
Rather feebly, kind of, yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Although
and
the
it's
CG shot where he kind of deflates, I think is kind of good.
but then immediately after that, Batman just like pops Mr. Freeze in the face.
Yeah, which again I feel is not. And particularly we've done this whole thing. We had the fun thing in
Mm-hmm.
earlier on where Mr. Freeze is in his cone of refrigeration. I forget what it was called. What was it called?
The
Where he's
cold
in
beam.
the cold beam. And I
Yeah.
feel like surely is there some way we could have inverted that and Mr. Freeze is cornered by heat, which we're doing all this thing
Mm-hmm.
with telescopes beaming sunlight
Oh, you're
around.
right. Yeah. Why didn't they do that? That would have been much better, actually.
As you say, it feels like it's it feels like a fight scene that hasn't actually been storyboarded. You
Yeah.
can sort of feel like the museum thing has been storyboarded with an inch of its
Yes.
life.
Yeah.
I believe there was a drawing where that vase goes up in the air, and I believe there were two drawings of how it got down again, and all
Yep.
of that sort of. Whereas this just feels like, all right, guys, just slug it out a
Yeah.
bit.
Just do a punch. Barbara gets to do a little computer genius thing, if that helps. I do wish that I mean, this is just my wish about Batgirl, that they had kind of like connected that computer stuff throughout the actual movie, as opposed to bringing it in just here in the last second.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out that satellites are mirrors. I don't know if people know that about satellites. That's a
They do.
that's an, a new piece of information, that like they use the satellites as mirrors, and that focuses sunlight on the freezing city, And guess what? With an amazing musical flourish, everything, all the ice melts. Gothamites are back to normal. And it turns out Freeze is now, he's been captured. He says, "Go on, kill me, like you killed my wife." And they have proof that actually it was Poison Ivy who tried to kill his wife. But guess what? We found her and we restored her, and she's still frozen alive. This is what happens.
It has something thematic about it. Is that, you know, it does play into this whole thing about you were once a doctor. It connects Mr. Freeze to the life he had and is long lost. And there is actually some meaningful redemption. I think Clooney's actually good in it.
Yeah, I like it. I like that it is not the most obvious thing that they could do. The most obvious thing is just like both Poison Ivy and Freeze and Bane are all like knocked out with one big punch, and then now we put them all in prison, and they're like gnashing their teeth. Like, they actually take a second to give Freeze a different kind of ending, and a more hopeful kind of ending.
And luckily, he has found the cure for McGregor's syndrome, at least partly. I like the sort of neatness that he has these vials in a little pocket in his suit.
Yeah.
And the sort of take 2 of these and see me.
And call me in the morning.
Then call me in the morning.
Yeah.
And I sort of like the Mr. Freeze and this prone sort of string, and he's got his eyes are kind of blind, and he's sort of desiccated and, you know, hopeless. I like the way he still cracks a joke.
Yeah, he's always happy, that guy, even in defeat. And so they cure Alfred. Alfred's all better now.
I'm very impressed at how fast this happens, because I'm not saying I was literally counting down to the end, but I was sort of looking at the counter. I was going, God, they've only got 3 minutes to figure Alfred and do this. And they actually, I was saying, have I got that right? They do it in 3 minutes, which is no messing about.
He just perks up. Ivy is not dead, it turns out. She was just trapped, I guess. Now she's Harley Quinn.
I guess they do it with the Riddler as well, don't they? In the previous film, this idea of the defeated villains a bit sorry for themselves in prison is it's so sort of childish, but I find it's an oddly satisfying scene.
And then that they put Freeze into her cell with her,
which is truly, I don't know what that's made of. I mean, I'm not sure. Is that how you treat a mentally ill person? I don't think so.
And it sort of positions him again as kind of like he's sort of a good guy because he's going to be torturing the bad villain. I don't know. It's a weird thing that they do.
Kind of like, it's like a joke, but I'm not sure what the joke is.
Yes, yeah, exactly. There is one last absolutely tragic Batgirl moment, and then this is the end of the movie. Here they are, they're doing the post game. Alfred gets up and walks into the room. Everybody's happy. Here's Bruce and Dick and Barbara. They are all thrilled. And Barbara says, I don't what they're boasting. I forget what cues this. But they're kind of boasting about defeating the villains. Barbara says, "Excuse me, I believe I'm the one who kicked Ivy's botanical butt. Yeah, that was me. I did it all by myself. That was me." One of the most annoying lines ever put on film. I don't know what they were thinking.
How much of this is down to Alicia Silverstone and Clueless having just been this zeitgeisty huge movie? Did they just think everyone would love her
no matter what she says?
And therefore we would just, because it does sort of presuppose that we think Barbara is the coolest person,
adorable,
and really deserves this praise,
right?
Is not being utterly obnoxious and self-absorbed.
The really sad thing is it feels to me like this was like a feminist statement for them.
I think it probably was, and unfortunately it's about as articulate a statement as you would get in a late 90s film directed by a gay guy and written by a bro screenwriter. I mean, it does feel like that. It does feel like, I mean, we're dealing with a film that, you know, mostly seems to be the work of people who've never interacted with a woman, let alone a relationship. Well, it feels like there's a whole sort of thing running through us that women are really alien creatures that we don't
really understand.
We don't understand their ways, and if only we could. It's well-meaning, and we are looking back a quarter of a century. I mean, how many genuinely good female characters have we had in superhero movies since then? Is maybe
I would say we've had enough.
We've had better ones than this, but
I don't think I'm not even going to go into it. I don't think you win that fight.
All right, okay.
That Barbara is the best that we get. She is not.
It's the best you're going to get in '97.
It's the best that we did get in
Yeah.
1997. And then they all kind of run past the bat signal, and it is the end of the movie. And if this movie had made more than $107 million, then we would have had a fifth one.
What a film that would have been.
Joel Schumacher apologized for it several times.
He did, but I think that almost became mythologized really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is a terrible film, and I think lots of
Yeah.
people died out on that. And in some ways, I guess Alicia Silverstone's the exception, but everyone else kind of no one's careers were particularly derailed by it.
No,
You know,
everybody was fine. Yeah.
Schumacher had a few lean years, but he went on and did plenty of other good films. And so I think that gives you license. You can dine out on being
Mm-hmm.
in the worst Batman film, even though I don't think it is.
Yeah.
And I think, you hear those stories about Clooney giving people who said they saw it their money back. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it became a sort of good sport.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like almost a bit sort of a little defensive. If you get in first, then you've avoided the ridicule.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
it. But
Well, I listened to his DVD commentary, which he recorded, I think, like 2005. So it's about 8 years on, and now he knows the reputation that it has, and I think he's actually quite sweet about it.
he seems good humored, and he seems to own the shortcomings of that film,
Mm-hmm.
and he's without demeaning or disowning his own work. And I think that's a delicate line to tread.
I like that he takes response. There's a great line where he says, "If you love a movie, there are hundreds of people that made it lovable for you. If you don't like it, blame the director. That's what our name's there for."
Mm-hmm.
Which is really sweet. Just kind of like taking it on and not saying there was a problem with the cast or the crew. He takes responsibility for it. And when he talks about pieces that people did not love, basically what his response is like, well, it was meant to amuse.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was there for.
I think you can tell he put a lot into the work and took a lot of joy from it. And that,
Yeah.
again, it's very hard. I think it's very hard to be cynical about that or too dismissive or nasty.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think he deserves a lot more credit for this than he gets, because it is, while it has its successes and it has its shortcomings and it has some really weird, odd things. I think it's also got a lot that's cherishable, and it's got a lot that's very distinctive, and I think puts way more effort in than a 2-hour toy commercial, really.
I mean, the free stuff, just pretty much every scene with him, everything about him, I think is worth cherishing. I wouldn't give that up.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea that this is the worst superhero movie, like I would say, like Elektra and the 2015 Fantastic Four. I don't know if you've seen that.
I have seen that, which I think is
that one, like the 2015 Fantastic Four, like it's just mean. Like the thing that's upsetting about it is that it ends, like the whole third act is just the Fantastic Four like underground being tortured and upset and hating Reed and hating each other, and it feels like it's mean to those characters, and there's nothing like that here. I like that is bad. Like it's badly made, it's badly conceived,
Mm-hmm.
and there's no excuse for it in the way that at least Schumacher was just trying to make people happy.
I think this is probably the most influential superhero film since the original Superman.
How come?
Well, the whole trajectory of those films in the 20 years that follows would be completely different had this film not. It's in some ways, it's like a piece of elastic. Anything creative is like a piece of elastic. You stretch it, and generally, if it's an established property, you find it with Doctor Who every once in a while, someone will try and reinvent it really aggressively, and what happens is it just snaps back into shape and becomes the thing it always was. But the tension, when you get to that real stretch point, you get really interesting stuff. And that interesting, my mileage for entertainment has sort of changed over the years. I think I'd take an interesting film over a satisfactory one, and this is an incredibly interesting film. I could talk. Well, we have talked about this in a way that. There are lots of things I've seen that are superficially much. They're much more tasteful. They're much more efficient, but they're not interesting.
Yeah.
So I would contend that without this, I mean, Chris Nolan is not to my taste, but I can see how I don't think it would have happened without this film.
This film feels like the end of a particular line of thought. You follow,
Yeah.
you know, a particular way of thinking about superhero movies as like comic book and huge and loud and silly and Dutch angle. And this is about as far as you can take that.
Mm.
And which, you know, it worked as long as Batman, you know, in Batman Forever. And then they tried to push it like a little bit further with this. And then there's nowhere else to go after that. And so I think to your point, like if you take that all the way to the end of that line, then you have to rethink. And that's why 3 years later, when they made X-Men, it is completely different from that. It is now really trying to say, let's locate this in real feelings and real characters.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to pretend that everything's a comic book. We're not going to make everything like bright and everybody puts yellow costumes on.
And I think also it was probably a lesson and a very, maybe a hard lesson, certainly Warner Brothers to learn that you couldn't manufacture a merchandising event out of one of these films. You know, the sort of chicken egg thing. And I think we know the egg really did become before the chicken in this case because it was all of it. I mean,
yeah,
on the DVD features, you've got people literally the art department people talking about the designs kind of being ripped out of their hands because they've got to go away and make tooling to go off to the Far East. So they'll have a Batmobile in toy shops in 18 months' time.
Yeah.
All of that sort of, which is clearly not a sensible way to make anything, let alone a movie that putting incredible amounts of money into.
Yeah.
And I think there was this film is an example, I think, of people overreaching in an extraordinary way. And I think that's sort of why I love this, because it is an endpoint, and it's an endpoint that I don't think is ever going to be revisited.
Yeah.
You know, I'm glad that thing about Schumacher praising the hundreds of people who made something special. I think that bit of it, I think even the most cynical person who really dislikes that film, I know that you can take that away from anyone who works.
Stuart Manning, thank you so much for coming on the show. It has been so much fun talking to you about this. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter. I don't have much to say, but you can check me out if you want. I'm at Stuart_Manning. And I think I'm that on most things. So yeah, say hello.
Fantastic. For more comedy about the history of superhero movies, you can go to the blog at superheroeseveryday.com. If you like the show, please leave a review, or you could reach me on Twitter, Facebook, or on the blog. It would be great to hear from you. And please tell the people in your life about the show. Here's what's coming up in the next episode. Coming up in 2 weeks, film critic Robert Fairs joins me to talk about the 2016 massive multiplayer mashup, Joss Whedon's Justice League. How do you get in touch with the tribes of men, do you think? Is there like a phone tree, or do you have to call them all individually?
He's got this kind of outfit that is all shiny and sort of a Vegas showgirl headdress. It's clear he's got a red carpet in his future somewhere, but he's got to pick up this mother box on the way.
Atlantis basically has a very similar kind of security system, which is basically just like a rope around it that says, please don't touch. I feel like they might have just given all 3 boxes to humans.
Oh, now don't go there, because
I'm just saying. I'm just asking questions.
I just kept waiting for somebody to say that all 3 of the mother boxes are named Martha.
All right, get excited for that. Come back for the Superheroes Everyday podcast. Thanks for listening. Love you. Bye.
I want to make sure you're serious about turning over a new leaf. I need a sign
How about slippery when wet?
of trust. Tell me your plan.
Kiss me and I'll tell you.
Tell me and I'll kiss you.